Yeah. Okay, well, don't worry. It's not exactly kind of like a sign that from the movie I just came, but well, partially it's that. But let me tell you, the movie I went to watch today was one of the most exhausting experiences I have ever had for the moment, and not just because of the movie, but because I also wanted to do some other stuff. And boy, that after the day was finished, I I am tired. And but you know what? Before the movie just escapes from my mind, like it always did, this is why I decided that screw it, tired or not, let's make this vlog of the. It still was worth the trip. I mean, for starters, I got the sad news that the candy shop near the movie theater that I sometimes go, it was gonna close its doors. But I was lucky that there was gonna be 40% discount on everything, and I bought myself this Stitch cup. Just for giggles, I'll say. I like Stitch, except the live action remake, and but so yeah, I got this. Looks cute. I like how the material, but again, 40% discount. That was awesome. Also, I went through Barnes and Noble and bought myself my calendar. This year's calendar, I decided to go with dragons. This is I'm gonna stare this thing during the whole year. Okay, but still, yes, I already had my Christmas. I already did my Christmas shopping. I gotta also say that depending on my mood, I got a few days that I must watch holiday specials, and if I am lucky, I might gonna put out the usual special. But just like the last time, I might gonna cut it short, because honestly, the Christmas making Christmas specials on the same basis that I tried to do, in which I have to pick 12 of them per year. It's much harder. It's really hard. So this is why I thought that I have to scrap that thing and then go along with it. And of course, I have to compile my top 10 best and worst movie of the year. But that one, but at least I will say that compiling my top 10 best and worst of the year is the most fun that I get on doing all these things. This is why even my vlog, I kind of shit myself in the foot on watching those two movies that they're gonna definitely be on the list, but I don't know how to rank them. I have to analyze them one by one. But speaking of which, this is where we jump on to today's subject, which is none other than the third movie of James Cameron's really most ambitious project, which is none other than Avatar. In this case, Avatar: Fire and Ash. I don't know. I can't even know why I decided to watch it. Maybe because I still have kind of like the morbid curiosity, or because I had nothing better to do, or it was this or that SpongeBob movie, and also I had nothing better to do. But if you know me, I think for the last time I talked about Avatar, I don't consider myself a big fan of the IP. Let alone, I'm not even a big fan of James Cameron. I still think that James Cameron is one of the most overrated directors ever, and I think that sorry, I think that I'm kind of tipping the scale between him and Christopher Nolan. But the thing is that Christopher Nolan, at least he made some movies that I still respect. I still despise Inception and Interstellar, but then he gave Dunkirk, and I am very excited for The Odyssey. But for James Cameron, while I still like some of his movies, like Terminator 2, many people, I kind of begin to see how much people kind of just like him just because he's a good director, I'm gonna say, but I don't think that he's kind of like big deal. A lot of people, they talk about how much they love Aliens, the sequel of Alien, but I didn't like it. I didn't like Aliens. I still prefer the first one, the one that is directed by Ridley Scott. But in the case of Avatar, going to kind of like a recap on the whole thing. The first movie, they wanted to make you believe that it was groundbreaking and all this stuff, but personally, even the first time I saw it, I was like, seeing it, okay, pretty good, but doesn't sound groundbreaking, and that's it. The movie kind of felt forgotten, but then they decided to bring it back because James Cameron is really, really ambitious on this one, and he brought The Way of Water, in which it's the same thing. It was pretty visuals, but I don't think it was technically much of a big deal. But the more I think about it, The Way of Water was really boring. I know that some people like it, but for me it was kind of like a snooze fest. It was one of the most boring movies, I think, because it felt like it wanted to be a nature documentary, but they just wanted to add, the world of Pandora. And I know that I think that is bought by Disney, and they really want to push us that we want to be in the land of Pandora, the Avatar, and all this stuff. But they still kind of failed that this franchise is very forgettable. I mean, we start talking about that mostly just because someone, I think that James Cameron really was a genius putting kind of this chip into our head, in which it was like Avatar. Then it was like, hey, it's very famous and all that stuff. But we see it, nah. And then we almost forget about it, and then he brings it back. And it was like, okay, yeah, that was the greatest thing ever. And then we kind of forget it, and then this new one comes, Fire and Ash, because James Cameron wants to say, hey, we're going to explore, all the elements of the world. First water, now fire. And they were like, hey, hey, Avatar, here we go. So I went there, and mostly kind of a little bit with low expectations because, well, I kind of forgot most of the elements of the first movie, barely remember some of the stuff that happened in the last one. And it was kind of quite a packed house. And I'm sorry to say this, but despite the loud fanfare that some of the audience were having, because they were clapping even for I don't know for why, I am in the minority by saying that I wasn't too into this movie. I found this movie pretty underwhelming. I thought it was one of the most scatterbrained films I have seen, and I'm mostly talking about the script department. This is pretty much the same problems that the second one has, except that apparently they build a little bit enough for not making it treat like it is a nature documentary, because I'll give it a little bit of credit by saying that they decided to have this one a little bit more action-packed, because things kind of like moving on, but unfortunately we still have to go through a script that it really feels like it wants to be a Marvel movie. It still have really kind of like dull characters, because let's face it, the Na'vi are kind of like boring and uninteresting, and we got kind of even the characters are kind of like just kind of like trying to be three-dimensional, but they're not as, we kind of just don't feel it. And I'm trying to, and honestly, yeah, I'm not trying to be the kind of like the snobby kind of guy. I'm just giving exactly kind of like my thoughts on what my observation goes through. So, but honestly, I didn't buy too much of the character, even from the first movie, and the second one kind of like it also extended a little bit of the family, but man, that it feels a little bit too Care Bears kind of thing. And yeah, everyone's gonna say is pretty preachy on their environmental message, and you know what? It is. The first one saves the trees. The second one saves the whales. And in this one, if I gotta be honest, apparently this third movie is like someone put the first two movies in a blender and just add some spice and then that's what you got. Because a lot of the pacing that and some of the beats of the movie, it really felt like like the second movie, and some aspects of the first movie also. And by the way, I'll give you in advance a little bit of disappointment for a movie that it advertises so much that it's gonna be fire and ash. It doesn't have much fire and ash. They still are stuck on water. So here's a disappointment for you on the first get-go. They are still stuck on water. They only have fire for like the first kind of like 30 or 25 minutes. But you might say that, oh, that's good enough. You think that it's going to be good enough for a movie that is like 3 hours and 15 minutes. And I think more because my screening was at 3. And then the movie ended at 6:25. And that is counting the AMC's 30 minutes of trailers. In which, trust me, that movie was like all those those Avatar movies is a chore. Watching those Avatar movies is pretty much an endurance test. It's an endurance test of how are you gonna sit and pay attention to all these things. And unfortunately, the pacing of the movie makes this thing a lot tiring. So much that it comes to like 5 moments in which I just screamed and yeah, look, just like the MST3K guys. I was like just screaming and, but no, it kept going and going and going. It wouldn't be so bad, but my God. And you might be saying that, oh, but it has pretty visuals. Are you sure? Look, I didn't watch it on IMAX or 3D. What's the point? I mean, a good movie should be measured on how it's content. It doesn't matter if you gotta get the 3D and all this stuff. And those are kind of like, well, add-ons. But I don't know if it's the movie theater or something like that. Even though I went to the standard, I did notice that the frame rates went kind of like a little bit too quick, to the point that you see kind of like the character that are especially on front on high definition, and the whole movie feels like you're watching something in high definition. I don't know, again, if it's a movie theater or something like that. I could see it. But then, I don't know if it's me, but during the first couple of minutes, every time I see those high frames per second movement with this really high definition atmosphere, I kind of begin to notice its downfall, because when the character begins to move, they kind of begin to move in a kind of like a faster rate. To the point that it was kind of like uncanny. They kind of like move unnaturally quick. I think they wanted to make it kind of like a smooth movement, but then you see them, move kind of like the quick pace, even the face kind of like move. And I noticed that in a lot of things. And also, this movie kind of became a little bit hazardous on myself because the movie kind of had like to make a lot of high definition on the things that are on front. Then the background has kind of like a lot of those blurry focus, to the point that it really made me a little bit anxious. I'm not kidding. When the movie finally ended, I was gonna text something with my friends, and my hands couldn't stop shaking. That's how tired I was from watching that movie. And you know what? It is funny that I usually talk about the acting and the story and all this stuff, but I had to go a little bit out of the way about this cinema, in which I will agree that it's a spectacle, but unfortunately, I always criticize Avatar looking a little bit too realistic because, what's the point of making animation to look too real? I see real life 24/7. I already made this argument that yes, it is a challenge, and when you make something look too realistic, well done. But it kind of makes a lot of these things look kind of like dull. And in a way, this is why I kind of appreciate when you kind of got out of the box and make the world look a little bit more imaginative, bouncy, or it's having kind of like some interesting character designs. For example, I will commend, of course, the creature design, but not exactly the Na'vi. I wasn't never kind of like a fan of the Na'vi. The tall blue Smurfy people. That the biggest problem that I have is that they look a little bit so alike that it gets a little bit challenging to distinguish who is who unless you really pay attention of the structure of their mouth or a little bit their hairstyle. But that kind of gets a little bit kind of like challenging because most of them kind of look alike. And they missed kind of like that opportunity when they show that there are other Na'vis from different tribes. For example, the tribe of water, they have a little bit more light blue skin, and now they got kind of like the red, the ones from the fire, which are a little bit more vicious. Which I could get to that later. The only difference with these is mostly that they have red painting across them. They almost look like they are the inbreds of Quan Chi and Kratos for some reason. I'm sorry if I gave you the mental image, but that's kind of like what pops out of my head. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole thing that happened, and I think that this is the reason why a lot of people, they kind of cheer, because it is basically they just don't care. They just have smoke and mirrors and they just want to see a good spectacle and don't think about it. It's pretty much like when you go to these attractions on a park studio or a studio, let's say. The best way that pops into my head is remember when they did Water World on Universal Studios, in which you don't think too much, then you go for the spectacle, nothing much, that's your mouth, and everything is wow, and you just applaud, and that's it. Although, it's a little bit challenging on movies because, well, especially on this one, which I had to sit look kind of like 3 hours and 30 minutes. So with that kind of the way, okay, so I could go with the this is where the movie really falls, which is the story. The story basically is, if is Pandora, this big planet in which humans try to colonize it because apparently the planet Earth kind of suck, and apparently they got resources like this. What was it? This mineral that they want to exploit. By the way, that mineral is so forgettable that from the first movie that is not even mentioned in the second and third. But I will always remember that mineral was kind of like the main reason. So they want to colonize this planet in which I don't know why the hell they want to colonize a planet where the air is unbreathable, everything wants to kill you. It's nuts. It's nuts. The Navi are kind of like these cat people. Although I barely want to call them cat people because they have no cat thing except for a little bit the noses. What was I gonna say? So, if you remember, the main character, Jake Sully, who was this guy in a wheelchair who his body died, and there's also this technology about the humans going into the body of the Navi and all this stuff. And honestly, at this point, it feels like just nonsense. Almost like, no, well, not nonsense. It's just, what's the point? So they get into so basically Jake Sully, he falls in love with Naturi, and then they got children, they got exiled, they go to live with the water people, and that was kind of like the part of the second movie. Oh yeah, and one of the children died. And this movie is basically kind of like that, and I was kind of hard for me to understand because one of the problems that I have with especially the franchise specifically this movie is that they will have too many cooks in the kitchen of storytelling. They wanted to add a lot of stories in this one, but it kind of felt kind of like scatterbrain, and they want to pay attention to one thing, then another, and then another, then another. It's almost like this movie had ADD. Some of the things that they wanted to focus is like, for example, they got the story with the Natiri, who she is grieving for her son, and of course she has this hatred against the kid the human kid that they adopted. This kid named Spider, who is also the son of the main villain. The soldier who was played by Stephen Lang. I gotta forget the name of it. They wanted to also have that Spider wants to stay with them, and he has kind of like issues with the father. You had Jake Sully, who he had issues with the son, who the son never listens to any order because the son is feeling guilty that he is responsible of the death of his brother. And then we got the Stephen Lang, who he wants. Stephen Lang, who wants to reconnect with his son, but he doesn't. And of course, the other military people, they don't trust him because he screw up. He screw up. There's also the fact that they meet the Fire Navi, who are kind of like the more savage people who are a little bit more like warmongers, and they want the advanced weaponry of the humans. There is the what was it? Then there is Spider, who apparently, because of some magic that one of the Jake's adopted daughters also wants to. She becomes connected with the goddess of nature and all this stuff. She gave the Spider Kid the power of breathing in the toxic air without the need of the mask, because the boy that they wanted to get rid of that. And so this is why now it caught the attention of all the humans, because they want to live into this planet, and they say, hey, we want to study this kid. We want to study this kid because he probably has the secret. But unfortunately, taking out this secret is gonna be is gonna kill him. You extract the thing that is inside his body, and also because that kid is kind of transforming into a hybrid with the Navi. And you know what? Now that I think about it, that's the plot of The Last of Us. It kind of we will add The Last of Us into the pile of familiar territory that you're gonna see in this Avatar franchise. What other? So yeah, So with so much things that are kind of carrying out this movie, there's some of the moments where really kind of begins to feel disjointed to the point that I can't even focus what thing I should basically care. Uh, so honestly, I think this is why sometimes, especially on movies, they keep some plots into A plot, B plot, at least a C plot. But I will say that it's a minimum of three. But this one I feel like is five. I'll say. And you know what? If it wasn't for the dullness of most of the characters and some of their dumb decisions, I would have cared more. But unfortunately, the more the movie kind of like advanced, I kind of began to see how much hypocritical the Navi are, in which the Navi are kind of like saying that we're the spirit, we're one with the spirit, we're the good guys, we are apparently peace loving, but it's kind of like a lie, because these are savages that, well, they call them novel savages that they basically have this bigotry against humans, especially you see it on the Terry. I never liked her even for the first movie, and then she kind of have this hatred to the Spider Kid, and it doesn't help that Spider. Well, in a way, he can be a little bit of an interesting character, but I cannot fan them a little bit too much on his attitude. His attitude, it was kind of like a little bit too kind of like surface level or something like that. Surface, and say that I think that he's kind of like this surf kid with anger issues that he basically hates his father. I mean, if you put yourself into the shoes of the kid, you kind of understand, but But here's the problem: when kind of the side in which you're supposed to hate, it kind of shows a little bit more likability than ones that we're supposed to root for. I don't know. For example, Stephen Lang, that's the guy who is supposed to be the villain. He actually shows us a little bit of some layers of interesting aspect about that. He might have some kind of redemption, or he just kind of like the guy that basically he's just doing his job, and everything. But honestly, even I will call that kind of like weak. They want to make us feel like he was caring for the little spider, but honestly, this Spider Kid, I think he only appears on the second movie, and there is. At least as far as I can remember, the second movie tried to build some bond into it, but then now this kid really kind of like despises him, man. And for someone who is saying that this kid is kind, he doesn't show it, and especially when the Stephen Lang character, he's not acting, like he is Endeavor from Hero Academia, because he's not exactly kind of like abusive. He's rash, but you can tell that he has some layers of some good humanity into it. Even though he kind of like still a smug jackass in which some people kind of got entertained. Not exactly me, because then comes kind of like these moments in which the dialogue really turns into a Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of dialogue. Like saying kind of like quippy dialogue, or some of them work, some of them doesn't, but you can tell the Marvel influence into it. Oh, and speaking of Marvel, we did have a snippet of Marvel Doomsday before the movie. The trailers ended, then the movie was gonna start, but then no, we got one more trailer. Here is Avengers Doomsday. Here's Avengers Doomsday, which is basically, hey, we got Steve Rogers back. I don't know. I was deviating myself on that. Okay, so there is there's a moment in which they go to they have to go through these other tribes, Navi, which I already mentioned. There's this queen who she's also a little bit of a warmonger. She kind of builds kind of like this relationship with the general character, which is kind of also very comical, because there is a moment in which he kind of snorts cocaine. I'm not kidding. There's a moment in which it kind of looks like he snorts cocaine, and then it turns into the almost like if you play these what was these games? Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 5, in which there are these moments where the character begins to hallucinate. It turns into that. It turns into that because of that moment in which he apparently snorts cocaine. And guess what? That Fire Navi people, they're not exactly consequential because they're just there. They technically joined the human because they gave them weapons, and their importance is kind of diminished. They're kind of diminished. They feel like you could remove them entirely from the movie, but it won't, and nothing will affect too much. And so they really advertise so much. And remember, again, I repeat myself. Despite calling itself Fire and Ash, we're still on water. Almost 75% of the movie is still stuck on the water world, and the movie made us feel that we're gonna watch the fire. Then it doesn't do that. They're stuck still on water. Jeez. So yeah, but because of the whole scene with the Navi being kind of like, it's the typical story that it still hammers a bit too much down, in which it's always the same message: Navi good, humans bad. I don't mind, stories in which you're gonna portray the humanity as the bad guys. Because they are. When I sometimes think about it, sometimes you can show the worst of humanity and think that it's not worth it. But they're kind of like, there are clever ways to showcase some stuff at that. But when you think about it, when you make kind of like a story in which you showcase humanity bad, and because they are bad, always evil and all that stuff, there is a certain audience that they're gonna be taken back, or they're gonna be they are not gonna take it very well, because these are kind of like the people in which they say that, well, there's still some good in humanity. I mean, we're flawed, but we're not technically evil. But when you kind of make them a little bit too cartoonish and not exactly kind of like a good way, they're gonna think that there's something wrong, I'll say. And honestly, if they wanted to showcase kind of like the good of humanity, Spider is not exactly kind of like the good way. He's still kind of like in the side of the Navi, and he totally rejects the other side. He even rejects kind of like his own father, in which if you're gonna showcase that he has some semblance of the good of humanity, you should also give him some kind of kindness, and even to his own species. But no, he's really kind of like really hostile to that. And also, I'm gonna admit that they clumsily botched this kind of like this theme about hatred, in which they wanted to showcase that Neteri, the Zoe Saldana character, has this hatred to Spider because, well, his kind killed her son. I mean, she's kind of like the most hateful of them all. But then it took only a pep talk from Sully saying that, well, I'm a human, you don't love me, and all this stuff and whatever. But it felt kind of like weak, and it wanted to take the perfect opportunity on one moment in which a sacrifice had to be made. But instead of having her doing the trial, it was made by Sully. And you know what? One of the things that I also really not very too keen into is how predictable the outcome is gonna get, especially when they wanted to play this movie kind of like really safe, really safe. I mean, this is where, as much that I have criticism to Digimon Adventure Try, I will give it credit for, well, the final episode, in which they have kind of this ending in which it's not the prettiest, but it's the one that it has to be done. But it has to be done no matter how painful it is. So we got that, and also they have kind of like these really kind of like dumb moments out of nowhere. The one that pops out of my head is Jake's. I don't care if I spoiled a little bit too much. Jake is captured, and of course he's a pariah of the human because he's a traitor. But then out of nowhere, there is a scientist. Who he appears, and he's like, I don't know. I don't know. Is this? I'm just a biomarine guy. I didn't sign up today. You're signing with him? Get out of here. And then that marine biologist, he breaks Sully out, and then after he breaks out, he's like, hey, I know you. I'm your friend. I freed you. So here you go. Bye. This guy came out of nowhere. He's basically a living Deus Ex Machina, just for a situation. And of course, we get kind of like the moment in which people always cheer, and which is always get a spectacle with the battle between the Na'vi, who they are armed with animals, bows, arrows, in which for some reason those are really effective against, well, big technology and all that stuff. Oh, don't worry, they have exploding arrows. Okay, maybe I could buy as much as I can buy, just as Hawkeye. Just as Hawkeye shooting arrows to bring down alien technology, or we got also, what was it, Legolas putting down this big giant monster with arrows. All right, there's kind of like a moment in which I could bring my suspension to disbelief. But here's the thing about the movie's pacing, in which I'll go again. The movies, there are times in which it shows like it's gonna end in a cliffhanger, but like 4 or 5 times, but it doesn't. It continues on and on and on. I'm sorry I'm repeating this, but this is kind of like my biggest gripe, is that it's so long that it's a chore. And the movie doesn't technically earn that. It's the most exhausting movie I have ever seen, and it's not exactly kind of like in the good way. All right. Okay, then. Okay, I already gave also a little bit of a positive in order to mix this balance. I don't want to showcase myself, being like the party pooper, saying that I'm gonna ruin your day and all this stuff, or probably what people say that, but this movie wasn't made for you. I know, maybe, yeah, but that doesn't take away my liberty to, watch it, try to pinpoint what attracts people with it. I got my own criticism of it, because at the end of the day, if you watch this movie kind of like a spectacle, maybe you'll get something with it, and good for you. Because to be fair, it's not the worst I have seen this year. I'm just kind of like mesmerized. Why do we care about this franchise that it wasn't exactly kind of like too good to begin with? It's almost the same as how the Zack Snyderverse is very loved by many, especially for some DC comics, when it didn't start out well. I don't think that people are saying that, because it changed pop culture. No, I don't think that because if it was like that, we could only remember it. We could remember it very fondly, but honestly, it's only remember fondly by the tech demos or how technologically advanced it felt. Even though the first movie didn't felt too much like that, it's just a movie that it kind of overhyped itself to the point that is it it's kind of questionable if it's earned or not. Uh, so, uh, so honestly, I even right now I feel exhausted of it. So at the end of the day, Avatar: Fire and Ash is, for the most part, for me, it was disappointment. But I'm mostly null about it because even from the second one, I was disappointed. This one, it shows still some disappointment. If you like it, fine. Not gonna take it away from you. You have your you probably know how to shut down your brain and just watch these Murphy people going through with it. But at the end of the day, I'll give this credit to Avatar: Fire and Ash. It wasn't exactly the dumpster fire like this year's Smurf.